1 Timothy 6, 6 through 12. We are once again thinking through the Word with the help of the screen and the colored pencils, trying to make sense of a paragraph here in Paul's letter to Timothy and to the church. Verse 6 is unique on my app in that it is not the standard ESV. Verses 7 through the rest of our text seem to be, but somehow the wording is different here. Now there is great gain in godliness with contentment. Your ESV should read, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Not a real difference, just a little bit of word order rearranged. But the point is the same. The great value, the great gain, the great benefit is in godliness with contentment. There's our theme. Now he's going to go on to make an argument. Why is this true? Well, verse 7, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. So strip away all the material stuff, and you still have value. You still have great gain if you have godliness with contentment. That's the point of verse 7. You brought nothing into the world, you'll take nothing out. In between, you might amass a whole bunch of stuff. But when you strip away all that stuff and you're left with nothing material, there should still remain a great value, a great treasure, a great gain. And that will be a life lived for God, godliness with contentment. Now, we come to a word of transition as we move to verse 8. But. So it points back to something and then contrasts it with moving forward, right? Looking back, we're talking about spiritual value, the great gain that comes not from material stuff, because we brought nothing and we take nothing. So great gain is that spiritual value. Contrast that now with a statement about material value. But if we have food and clothing, that's not godliness, but it is the contentment. If we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. So there's our connection. The contentment, we're still maintaining godliness, even though we're talking about material things. We're simply saying that we can be satisfied, we can be content, we can be godly with the bare minimums of food and clothing. So yes, spiritual value is separated from material possessions, verse 6 and 7. However, when we have that minimal amount of spiritual possession or material possession, we should be content. And so contentment now is emerging as a common theme of application for our godliness. He has just told us that with these things we should be content. Now we're back to our word of transition. But, so looking back, looking forward, the back is content. We just heard content, but, and now we're contrasting that with the desire to be rich. There's the contrast. That's why the word but is there. We heard we're supposed to be content with the bare minimums. The contrast is this desire to be rich. And what does that desire lead to? Leads to temptation, snare, many senseless and harmful desires, And those desires are such that they plunge people into ruin and destruction. Okay, that verse alone should be sufficient to stir us up, to wake us up to the dangers of materialism, a desire to be rich, to be comfortable, to be at ease, to have access to whatever we want, leads to temptation, which is a trap, which harms and ruins. How can he say all that? How can a desire to be rich be this destructive? Well, I'm glad you asked and noticed our explanatory word for. Here's why. For the love of money, which is parallel here to this desire to be rich, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. So we have this root, maybe a big tap root going down, and from it sprouts all kinds of evil. It's an ugly plant, all kinds of evil with a common root, the love of money. The text goes on to say that it is through this craving that some have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows, many pangs. Now, we come to verse 11. And again, our word of contrast. But as for you, contrast goes back to some have wandered away and pierced themselves through. But as for you, O man of God, flee these things. What things? What things? Well, looking back, that desire to be rich, the love of money, those who have wandered away from the faith, flee those things. Rather than pursuing wealth and ease and more and money, rather pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. And we're tempted to say, what? Flee money, all the stuff, at least the love of it and the pursuit of it, and pursue instead these virtues. What I gotta have money. How will pursuing righteousness put food on the table? How will pursuing godliness pay the bills? How will pursuing faith and love and steadfastness and gentleness bring me any stuff? The answer? Faith. Fight the good fight of faith. That phrase in verse 12 almost just sounds like we've turned a page. We're done talking about money and now we're going to get on with the Christian life. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called and about which you made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. It's almost like all this is about your profession of faith and all this is about making sure you don't desire money, but that's not the case. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. Why? Not because there's monetary value there, but there is value. Remember how we began? Godliness with contentment is great gain. How is that gain? How do I not pursue money, flee these things, but pursue virtue and character, morality? It's an act of faith, and it might even be a fight. but it's a good fight. Fight the fight of the faith. What he says, take hold of the eternal life to which you were called. How do I take hold now of the eternal life? It's tied to this faith. Fighting the good fight of the faith is taking hold of the eternal life that we've been called to. There is a life that transcends our material life and its ease and satisfaction and possessions. So live your life for the immaterial, and that's a fight to do that. But it is the fight of the faith. It's taking hold of eternal life. It's taking hold of those things which are eternal and will bear eternal fruit. It's laying up treasure in heaven. And so be reminded this week, it's the middle of October, and you will be faced with decisions. Will you value godliness and its fruit of contentment? Will you check your desire for money and stuff? And will you live by faith instead of by the security that comes from stuff? In prosperous America, it is certainly true that living by faith is a fight. So work hard, wage war against materialism. You don't have to become the world's greatest minimalist, but you may want to work at it a little bit as the fruit of godliness that expresses itself in contentment. It's a rare gem. It's a good fight. It's a great gain. Grace and peace to you as you live out godliness with contentment.